Today, we're going to do one thing and one thing only. We're going to teach you how to debate the left or your leftist friends on socialism and why you should do it. I am Bob Nettleton, and I am going to save America. Hello and welcome everyone back to another podcast of Bob Saves America. Today we are doing part number 2 of the 2-part series on socialism. Today we're going to be diving in and teaching you how to debate the left or your leftist friends and why you should do it in regards to socialism. First, we're going to start off by just defining the term so everything is clear. So socialism, according to Google, is a political and economic theory of social organization that advocates that the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the government as a whole. Or basically, again, that the federal government controls the redistribution of wealth and the market in a country. To start, I think we need to address the main issue that I see that conservatives have when debating the left on general things as well as socialism. And I think the issue is that us conservatives, when we try and debate the left, is that we typically come at it from a logical, reasoned, and fact-based argument, which isn't wrong. But I think that where we miss the left on this is that we do not try to argue it from a moral or emotional standpoint. And I say this because the left tends to think an emotional or fairness level rather than a rational one. And this is because the left doesn't argue from a rational, logical, statistical way of reasoning. They like to argue based upon what they feel is right. And most times that us conservatives present the facts and prove them wrong, they will admit that their ideas do not work. They just try to change the argument from a rational and statistical one to an emotional plea. So when it comes to debating the left on socialism, you very well may convince them that socialism has never and will never work. The issue that you need to try and press across to them and get them to understand and believe is that socialism isn't fair like they preach it. You need to try and convince them that it is immoral and wrong. And it's wrong because you need to try and teach them that the redistribution of wealth is theft. Nobody is entitled to anyone else's property, especially money. Not you, not I, not anyone down the street, no matter how poor, how rich. Redistribution of wealth is theft. Another small note that you might be able to consider when trying to convince the left from a moral standpoint is that you need to try and convince them the United States is a nation of freedom and free ideas, to where a socialist country is the exact opposite. The socialist country controls the means of the market and your wealth. There is no freedom of destiny. You don't get to decide your destiny, the government does. After you've tried to convince them from a moral standpoint, you can then move into the factual side of the argument. To start, you might want to just let them know that socialism has been tried over 100 times. It has failed over 100 times. And it has killed over 100 million people in the last 100 years. Socialism is the ideology of envy, jealousy, and greed. And you can start by trying to ask them questions. For example, if socialism is so great, why do we need to force the idea of it? Why do we need to force the state to push these ideas? If they were so great, they would be pushed by the people naturally, right? Well, no. In fact, it's the exact opposite of the case. And just ask them about social security nets in the United States. Almost every single social security safety net that we have is either abused, failing, or completely bankrupt. Example number 1, Social Security. People in my generation are never going to see another cent of our Social Security checks ever again. Every single dollar we pay into it is gone. Why? Because Social Security is bankrupt. Example number 2, Medicare. Medicare has shown a documented fraud, waste, and abuse of over $120 billion a year. Example number 3, the U.S. Postal Service. Not only is it completely bankrupt, it gets outcompeted by private companies like UPS and FedEx. Example number 4, what about the education system? We spend more money per student than anyone else in the entire world, yet we still see falling and failing numbers of test scores and overall general knowledge, and have more people starting out of college in debt than anyone else in the world. Example number 5. The VA, with the longest and worst healthcare service maybe ever provided to anyone, especially our vets, is wasting over $150 billion a year for terrible service. And if that doesn't work, go ahead and ask them another question. And that question could be to ask them where socialism or socialist ideas that have ever been truly implemented to any country that has ever worked in the history of the world. If they say France, guess what? Bankrupt. Italy, bankrupt. Cuba, bankrupt. Greece, bankrupt. Argentina, bankrupt. Portugal, bankrupt. And guess what? Venezuela? Bankrupt! And next they'll probably come at you with, what about the Scandinavian or Norwegian countries? Well, this is one of my favorite things that they try and push because they have no idea what the hell they are talking about. The Norwegian and Scandinavian countries aren't socialist. They are free market, highly unregulated, free market economies with failing social safety nets that tax their citizens 40 to 60% of their income. It isn't socialist. It's also important to note to try and show them or try and teach them that the social safety nets aren't progressing. They are failing. They are only being upheld by the free, unregulated markets. These Scandinavian countries that show little to no growth every single year because of their social safety net policies, the Scandinavian, Norwegian countries that have almost nearly zero diversity with a nearly homogeneous population, and the entire population equates to that the size of Michigan. And yes, the current policies that they have in place are scraping them by, but these social safety nets are never a permanent solution. They're always temporary, and they're only held afloat by the free, super unregulated free market systems that they have in place, not to mention the old money that these countries have. And I hope that once you've tried to press these issues and explained your side of the argument to the people on the left or your leftist friends, that they might realize that socialism, if implemented in the United States, will destroy the entire foundry, the entire foundation the United States was written on. Freedom as we know it would be gone. Now, at the end of the day, if you were unable to convince these people that socialism is theft, socialism is evil, socialism is wrong, socialism has been implemented and failed over 100 times in the last 100 years, socialism has also killed over 100 million people, and that socialism has never and will never work, I'm sorry. These people are unable to be helped and want America and the world to fail. Hello and welcome everyone back to the Social Justice Warrior Roast event of the week. Today we'll be watching Milo Yiannopoulos, who I don't agree on with a lot of things, who destroys and dismantles the left's argument, especially Black Lives Matter and the entire left's movement against the police force. Hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did. Here you go.
And in fact, all the studies suggest. All right, sweetheart. Criminologist Dr. Richard Johnson from the University of Toledo. You want some facts? Here are some. Based on the 2012 numbers, it would take 40 years worth of blacks killed by police to equal the total number of blacks murdered by police in a single year. 900 people have been killed by cops in 2016. 47% were white males. Only 24% were black males. Black men are not killed out of proportion, especially considering that they're much more likely to interact with cops. People are killed by police about as often as they're killed by lightning. There are no protests about storms. Black males are 58% of those killed legally by private citizens in self-defense. You might think that's an aha moment about racist whites, but 75% of those were killed by other blacks. FBI statistics on murder lay bare the real threats to black lives in America. Black men are about 6.5% of the US population, but they commit 52% of all murders over a 30-year period, which has dipped to about 40% in recent years, but still horribly and vastly disproportionate. Black men overwhelmingly murder other black people. Whites overwhelmingly murder other whites. That's not the narrative from Black Lives Matter. Looking at overall violent crime, blacks are 27 times more likely to attack whites than vice versa, and 8 times more likely to attack Hispanics. That's a shocking number I hope you take away from my visit. 90% of blacks that die from murder die at the hands of other black people. Is that enough facts for you?
Thanks to everyone who made it this far. This is the official end of the podcast. If you did like it, please give it a thumbs up, share it, do whatever you like with it. And if you don't want to do that, at least subscribe. That really helps me out. Next week, we'll be diving into the Electoral College. But if you have any questions on the Electoral College that you want me to address in that video, or about socialism in this video or the previous video that I covered, please leave in the comments below, DM me on Twitter and or Facebook. That's all going to pop up on screen, probably right here in the middle of it in a couple seconds anyway. But again, if you guys liked it, please let me know. If you guys want me to do a certain topic, please let me know. Thanks for everyone tuning in. I am Bob Nettleton, and I am going to save America.